Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast where we are working our way through the book of Esther just a little bit at a time. This is your first time ever here. Thank you for jumping in. You can pick up wherever you want to. Usually we talk enough about where we've been and where we're going and try to put it all in context enough that I think you'll catch on to the story pretty quick. Or if you're having fun with it, you can always just go back and jump in at the beginning of this season, which is the book of Esther, or our first season, which is on the book of Matthew, or season 2, where we do one book per day. That was kind of a wild one. We went through that fast. Either way, whatever you choose to do, I'm just super glad that you're here. Thank you to everybody who's been here for a long time as well. Every now and then, I just got to remember to reset that so that as new people are coming in the door, you kind of get oriented and have a sense of what it is that is actually going on. So right now we are in the beginning of Esther chapter 6, and the story just keeps getting juicier. It's awesome at this point. There's huge tension going on, and we got a time crunch where one of the main characters who we're rooting for, Mordecai, the Jew, he doesn't know it, but he's about to be publicly impaled on this very day by his enemy, Haman, the right-hand man of King Xerxes. And it doesn't take a literary genius to go and look at the story here to figure out that there's really nobody who is well positioned to bail out Mordecai. He's in legitimately very big trouble. Okay, put a pin in that. I'm talking about something totally different here for just a second, but guess what? It's all going to relate back around. You'll see. So I did this podcast called Ironwood Rhino for quite a while. I think we ran it for about a year or so. Maybe I'll do more of those episodes later on. It was super, super fun. Just, I don't know, I do a lot of stuff. I got a little overwhelmed and I've kind of put it on the back burner for a while here. But what I did on that show is I would invite people to come on and tell me their weirdest outlier story, whether it was something spooky or just bizarrely inexplicable or wildly coincidental. And they would come on, they would tell me the story, and then we would try to dissect it a little bit together and analyze what was going on there and what to make of it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, it would be fun to do more of that at some point. And the logo and the music on that show, Jeff did the music. My friend Bethany did the logo. So good. The best stuff about the show was the guests and the music and the logo. And then I just brought down the property value with my dumb commentary. But one of the episodes we did that was great is we had a lady who came in. She was in her 90s, and her dad was scheduled to sail on the Titanic, to come from Southampton. Southampton, right? That's where it left from. I might be getting that right. It's something like that. But the port in England from which it departed, her dad was set to sail on that ship. And then at the last minute, in the hustle and bustle of getting ready to get on the ship and everything else, somebody catches her dad and explains that your brother's here. At least I think it was his brother. And we're, the whole family is able to get together. It's kind of last minute, but take another ship. Let's do this party instead. And so he sold, fatefully, his ticket to the Titanic and did not go. And I mean, you've heard about what happened there on the Titanic. It wouldn't have gone well for him. And so it's crazy that the lady who was telling me this, physically sitting here in my office with me, only existed because of that decision. Because obviously if her dad drowns at sea, he's not later going to have that baby with his wife. And further crazy about this is that descended from that man and his daughter, who was telling me all of this, are a whole bunch of kids and grandkids who I've come to know, and really one of the families who we cherish very much in our lives. So it was a very fateful decision in the moment. All of the timing just happened to work out a certain way. And my guess is that maybe it's not, quite so iconic a set of circumstances as that. Maybe it is. But my guess is that you have a story like that in your family or in your individual life, or maybe you got a bunch of stories like that where you're like, oh man, if I don't take that phone call right then I'm standing right there when this crazy thing happened. Or if I don't see that thing right there and just have a moment of pause and hesitation, then this crazy thing happens. Or if I don't go into that store right at that minute, I never would have met my wife because she was just passing by, right? I mean, it had to be perfect. And of course, all of these stories can be chalked up to fate or fluky circumstance or whatever. And indeed, even over here in the book of Esther that we've been working on, fate seems to be a character, but when you look a little bit closer, it looks like it's a fate that is entirely manipulatable and controllable by God, who is the actual providential master of all of these seemingly disparate, fluky events. like I said, you and I, we all have one of these stories where things just bounce a certain way at exactly the right time and then things worked out. Well, in the book of Esther alone, we've got how many of those kind of fluky moments? 5, 10, a dozen, 15? At some point, we should just add them up. But however many it is in the book of Esther, you've got so many things that had to go a certain way, and not just any time, but right exactly at this given moment in order for things to work out redemptively, to work out the way that they end up working out. So in Esther 6, the circumstance is Mordecai's as good as dead. It's just a matter of getting a rubber stamp from the king on the part of Haman. And of course, Haman's wife and his buddies suggested that he really get on this whole gallows, hanging, impaling thing right away in the morning. Eat the frog, just get the difficult things out of the way so you can enjoy the rest of the day. And so Haman, he's up at the butt crack of dawn and cannot wait to get in to just talk to the king to knock out his morning tasks, including impaling his rival and propping him up 75 feet in the air for everybody to see his writhing and then eventually dead body. So King Xerxes is up late the night before. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. He doesn't seem like the kind of man who should be troubled by things. He's the master of everything. But at the beginning of Esther chapter 6, he can't sleep. So he brings in a chronicler and he's like, "You just read to me the Royal Chronicles." "Well, which one, sir?" "I just pick one, read to me." Okay. So dude's reading to him all the things from the royal court records and all of this. And one of them comes up and I imagine Xerxes perking up, being like, no, back up a little bit. "What was that one? What was the thing you said about the assassination plot?" And I imagine the guy who's in charge of reading the Chronicles there is like, well, Mordecai the Jew, this exposed this plot. And then it looks like Xerxes thinks to himself, well, hold on. Do we ever remember to do anything for that guy? So he asks, what honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? And then the guy reading the book says, well, nothing's been done for him. And then here's how it reads. This is the very next verse, verse 4. "Then the king said, who's in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows he had erected for him. Are you kidding me? Seriously, right at that exact perfect moment. The king has been up apparently all night, and we're all the way into the beginning of the business day. And maybe Haman had special access to the king. Surely he did. So Haman's up bright and early, first rays of sunshine. The king is still dressed for bedtime, and he hears somebody clicking around out there on that marble floor or whatever. And in the midst of this conversation about we need to take care of Mordecai, he realizes somebody's here. Maybe he checks his metaphorical watch, like, oh, wow, that night went fast. Who's that out in the court? And I don't know how Xerxes thought that the guy reading the book would know. Maybe he's just asking the question rhetorically. But the answer we get is from the narrator, who in his Ron Howard voice says, "Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king." So again, I say this is just nuts. Haman is there to fill out the requisite paperwork to kill Mordecai the Jew, as the king is literally thinking about how he needs to reward Mordecai the Jew. Do you have any idea how many things must have been in those chronicles and for it to just happen to come up, flip on Mordecai the Jew right at that moment, and then for Haman to be there? One of those consequential coincidences, or well, more so, I think we're led to believe that this is the hand of God at work in a very subtle way. So then one of the attendants gives the same answer that the narrator just gave us. Haman is standing in the court. "Well, bring him in," the king ordered. And we can all see where this is going. What's the king going to ask him about? And Haman runs the court for him. He makes sure this stuff gets done. He acts on his behalf. I mean, heck, the guy's allowed to use his signet ring to issue orders. Of course, the king is going to ask his trusted right-hand man, his counselor, first thing in the morning about whatever happens to immediately be on the king's mind. And that is, what should we do to really make a big statement for somebody in whom the king delights? And speaking of delight, what Haman does in response to that question is also absolutely delightful. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.
This podcast exists because many of you kick in to make it happen, even though you don't have to. Learn more at thetmbh.com/support.